I think that the data on Trump's handling of COVID just suggests that for the majority of Americans, he's really, failed to lead on this issue. He hasn't achieved anything. He's not perceived as handling this issue successfully in any way. It's an issue that's particularly bad for him, and that's a problem because it's the issue that's on the headlines, every single day. It's what voters are hearing and thinking about, and that's not going to change anytime soon as long as the number of infections continues to increase. One of the things that we see in public opinion data and have seen for some time is that most presidents maintain pretty strong approval numbers among their own party. When a quarter of your own party doesn't approve of the way you're handling an issue, it really suggests that there is a challenge for you, because you've lost the people that would otherwise be the most inclined either to approve of you, to rationalize away any potential shortcoming. Oh, it's not Trump's fault. How can he control a virus? So I think one of the main reasons why his numbers are so soft on this issue is not because of Democrats who basically don't approve of him, in almost any context, but it's because some of independents and also his own party has seemingly turned on him, at least with regard to the pandemic.
Just this week, the Trump campaign made major changes, of course, just 4 months ahead of the general election. Brad Parscale from campaign manager was replaced with Bill Stepien. Here to discuss the Trump campaign shakeup is executive director of the American Conservative, Johnny Burtka. Great to see you as always, Johnny.
Good to see you, Johnny.
Thanks for having me.
Just react to the shakeup. What do you think is behind that, and do you think it'll ultimately help?
Well, I think what's behind the shakeup is that he's down double digits in multiple polls, and it's not a good look at all. To me, it seems like people aren't looking for energy right now as much as they are for stability, security, right? They want to know that when they leave the house that they're not going to get coronavirus, and if they do, that they're going to be taken care of. They want to be safe in their communities, right? They want to get back to normal in America. And I think that's a harder message for the president to deliver on.
Certainly changing campaign strategists is not sufficient unless those strategists can convince the president to conduct himself and to choose a campaign message that's pretty radically different than what he has been doing to date. Trump has always had approval numbers that were at best marginal for re-election, and now probably are just flat out insufficient for re-election. How do you raise the public's esteem for you? It's going to have to do with a change of, your ability to lead on these issues, a change of tone, shying away from the kinds of controversies that he typically generates with his attacks on various people, Joe Biden, Anthony Fauci, a whole long list. And honestly, I don't think that that's very easy for Trump to do. He's never really done it to date, and he's been the president for, over 3 years now. And moreover, he's doing it in an environment in which the things that he's being asked to handle are very difficult, right? The pandemic is a hard problem to solve. The economy that's so weak now because of the pandemic is not going to come back quickly or easily, as I think we've already seen. So to some extent, Trump is the victim of circumstance, but to some extent, he's the victim of his own missteps and self-sabotage. And many people have commented, for example, on the fact that his refusal to wear a mask, sends a signal to others that it's okay if they don't wear masks, and wearing masks would be one of the ways to reduce the number of infections and allow businesses and schools to reopen. And so there's a very sort of self-defeating way in which he's acted. So what I would hope if he had new campaign leadership and he was willing to listen to them is that he would shift gears pretty radically in terms of the way he presents himself as a leader with regard to the pandemic, that he would change his tone so that it's one that's less antagonistic and more proactive. And that might help to shift at least some voters' skepticism about his leadership. But again, time and time again during his presidency, we've seen that Trump struggles to do that, and he falls back on the same kinds of tactics that thus far are not serving him very well. With our data, we're trying to understand the public's attitude towards the pandemic, and we think it stems from the interaction of two key factors. One is a pretty basic biological predisposition that's been identified in psychology and other social science research, which is called disgust sensitivity. We all vary in our reaction to situations and circumstances that raise a risk of contamination or infection. What matters above and beyond that kind of biological predisposition, though, is the politics of these pandemics. And what we're able to show with our data is just how much partisanship has come to matter with regard to COVID-19, and to matter in ways that were different than Ebola and Zika. In the days of the Ebola epidemic, it was Republicans who were more concerned than Democrats. Republicans talking about the issue, using it as a cudgel to attack the Obama administration. With COVID, of course, it's the opposite of Ebola. It's Democrats that are more concerned than Republicans. And that's been true pretty much consistently over time, but with some interesting variation. And what we're able to show in the report is that the extent to which Democrats and Republicans differ, and in particular the extent to which Republicans are concerned about the virus, really depends upon the messages that they're getting from their party's leadership. In the most recent polling, we've seen those partisan differences grow larger and larger only in the last couple of weeks. With this surge in infections, has Republican concern, support for these policies started to increase alongside Democratic concern and support for these policies. But up until just a couple of weeks ago, the gap between Democrats and Republicans was growing pretty rapidly. And that, again, reflects the fact that Democrats and Republicans are largely hearing two different kinds of messages about the pandemic.